So my name is Jakub Klausa. I'm going to present you a little presentation today about using WebRTC as a kind of help for selling things in a retail chain. Usually I do more technical talks, so please be gentle. I'll try my best to not disappoint you. So as I said, I'm Jakub Klausa. I work with SS7 Technologies. We are based in Poland. If you need any help with SS7 or VoIP, just contact us. So we had this client, which was a big retail chain in Poland. Just by chance, it was an electronic store chain. So it was kind of easier to implement what we come up with. So the problem they encounter was like this. The stores sometimes look like this. There are shelves full of equipment, full of merchandise, and no clients at all. That's usually how it goes all week long. And on the weekends, you have crowds like you couldn't believe. So there was a problem of scaling the sales staff to accommodate all the potential clients. Of course, it's not only about people, but also about the store size and stuff like that. So it wasn't easy, and it isn't easy if you talk about single store. If you talk about the chain of stores, that's even harder. So they somehow addressed the issue the old way. So they built a call center that works, but the conversion rate at call centers isn't that great. Of course, they had an e-commerce site with the e-shop. You could buy their stuff, but that has even lower conversion rate. And of course, you have the old way of selling things, so you have the salesman in the store. The problem is you can scale the call center, you can scale the web shop, but scaling sales representatives isn't that much of a thing you can do. So we sat down, discussed the problem, and came up with an idea. An idea we called touch and try. As I mentioned, they are an electronic vendor, so we thought about implementing some kind of selling platform on some of their merchandise. They already have a pretty big display of all kinds of electronics, big chunk of it being tablets. So we had that covered. The technology we've come up with to cover that was we mostly use Camellia, some Asterisk, and for the WebRTC part, we used JSZip. Just by chance, most of their merchandise, if not all, I mean, they don't sell Apple stuff, so we have that covered. They run Asterisk on, sorry, mixed up the names. They run Android on all of their tablets, so that gets you covered as long as the browsers, as long as you talk about the browsers. Of course, that's Chrome right there, one of the best browsers to implement WebRTC. So all in all, we come to the conclusion that some kind of video connection between a salesperson sitting somewhere remote and being specialized in, being an expert on this particular brand or kind of equipment would be a good move to try to bring up the sales. So the salespeople working on that were sitting somewhere remotely using computers. And for a little help, we used QR codes to get rid entirely of entering anything with the virtual keyboard. But that's a little tougher subject mostly for security reasons, but I'll talk about this more later. So we began the trial. The trial began with a single location, but we were floating locations, so we were working on any single location at once, but their location were changing, just to see if big cities have some other take on the subject than smaller cities, and big malls have some other take on this than, let's say, mainstream shops. We come out with the decision that we will work at the beginning, at least, with a single vendor of the devices, just to make things straightforward, and it also helped our client to make the vendor pay for some of this, so that always helps. Plus, we wanted to make the experience for the customers as good as it gets, so we focused on A-brand equipment. That's always a plus for the customer. And to encourage clients to be brave enough to try this new way of buying things, we introduced some additional benefits for them, which was fast checkout, which essentially, you know this from, let's say, Apple stores here. You just grab an item from a shelf, and any salesperson in the shop can scan that code and check you out. That's not the case in most shops in Europe, so we implemented something very similar, just to speed up the selling process. So if once you make your decision, make the video call and get your mind made up about buying things, you will speed up home, and the checkout will be almost seamless. So our conclusion about the experiment was that face-to-screen isn't exactly the same as face-to-face. There are differences in the way people communicate over electronic gizmos, even when they see a live person on the other side of the connection. But that's as close as it gets when what you can do with technologies. We pondered about implementing stuff like avatars, selling stuff on the e-commerce side. You have these solutions you see on the airports where they have cut out some kind of cutouts of that get back displayed of a person in them that try to communicate with you, that try to mimic a live person, but that didn't work. And of course, that takes a lot of space and stuff like that, which is premium in retail. So the solution we come up with was as close as possible to face-to-face conversation, given all the circumstances, but it's not exactly the same. So you still get a higher conversion rate. I mean, a person you see face-to-face will usually sell more than any electronic mean of selling aid, but it's still one of the best we've seen. So that's one of the things I mentioned, the conversion rate, which is the number of calls made in conjunction with the SalesMate is one of the best in all the electronic communication whatsoever. And that's not hardly surprising because, as I mentioned it over and over again, that's as close as having a live person talking to you face-to-face as possible. You have the distance of 2 electronic gizmos here, but you talk to a living person. So that's always a plus. What we have planned for the future, and we haven't implemented yet. So we have a video recording in the pipeline. As it was not a very big trial, we want to implement video recording just to have electronic backup of all the things that happened during the call, just like you record your voice calls, right? It will only take much more space and much more resources to encode it and decode it for the review, but it still will be useful in any disputes, and still that's quite new technology, new way of selling things. So that will get you a great material for all the training for staff that will use that. We plan to actually, initially that was the beginning of what we wanted to do. We want to build in on a remote help, kind of. Using Get User Media Screen, we want to do a screen sharing on all kinds of devices to do like remote help for the people that just get acquainted with the technology, can do with some of the stuff. And like kind of, if I had to compare it to something, it would be like kind of Geek Squad just remotely. So there's that. And the part that I omitted while saying about how we implemented the stuff, we've used an entirely separate network for all the WebRTC communication. So it was dedicated bandwidth, dedicated network, completely under our control, our Wi-Fi. So we took all the measures we could to make the experience for the customers as pleasant, as uninterrupted as possible. But in the future, we want to open it up so you can consult the experts on specific brands or specific kinds of equipment, even from the comfort of your home. But that brings another realm of problems with it, like security of the checkout. That can be addressed with mixing technologies, but that still has to be addressed. But the biggest problem we expect to encounter when we kind of open it to the general public would be spam. Like initiating a video call for most people is close to zero. So we expect some people maybe try to spam the consultants just to make some kind of wannabe denial of service attack, just to use up the resources or just use up the consultant's time. So that's the problem we had to address. That's why we, as I was telling you about the QR codes we used, they're used in the backend. I mean, the team in the shop has it on the printout just to use to point the devices, the display devices, to the right address, not to bother them with inputting it through the virtual keyboard. But we don't want at this time to make it public, just for the sole purpose of working our way to solve the spam problem, probable spam problem. Of course, what we ideally envision in that product, in that service, is kind of like a call center, just without all the IVRs, all the stuff you hate about call centers. Just you get connected to a live person that is like you would get connected to level 2 or level 3 support at the first call without saying anything. So that's what we envision and what we'll try to do with that. It's a long way ahead of us, but we have some promising results from the trials. We see that the clients are very eager to buy the devices that they somehow seen in action, prove that they're working, that they're doing what they're imagining doing with them. So that's always a plus. And the conversion rates we observed are so promising that even the A-brand vendors are interested in going further with the project. So, so that's good. That's the idea. Of course, we have a few more ideas about where we want to go with it. The remote help part is also probably going to be a separate project, separate service, possibly even a paid one at some point in time as the technology matures. Maybe we'll go multi-platform, but that's open to other vendors implementing WebRTC either at all or at the acceptable level. So most, if not all of the stuff would be working. But we are very hopeful that will happen really soon now. So that's what we're counting on. Thank you. You have any questions?
Anyone have any questions? I had one quick question. This isn't turned on. What do you get back from the get user media screen?
You get it's like VNC. You get the screen of the device that gets connected. So okay. You can work remotely, like VNC, okay. in essence. Right. You can display a separate window, the whole screen, and stuff like that, or some designated region. That depends on what you're related to do. But in general, it's just remote okay. VNC-like. Only in your browser, of course.
Jakob, do you think, if you say the experience is different, do you think it would be better if the screen in the store was large and all that? And can WebRTC support a high-quality video for that?
I mean, personally, I don't think that's the issue, like the size of the screen and stuff like that. It's more like it's harder by bargaining with the salesperson that's on the other side of the proverbial wire than the person you have real life contact with. That's the stuff. More than something like people like seeing their device they want in action and seeing, okay, so when I will Skype my grandmother, so it's going to look like that. Great sound, great video quality. I want that. They are very happy with that. Just like the closing the deal part is a different experience. So I don't think we can really address it with technology. Or maybe we can. I don't know. We are not in the selling business. We are in technology business. So maybe if someone show us the way, we will try to implement something that will. But that's a different story. The experience is great. Just the closing deal part is a bit different. And you can bargain. You can't bargain on a web shop, right? You just can't. You just get a given price or something like that, and you can't bargain. In a shop, you can.
Other questions?
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your attention.